Caught my wife cheating with my stepbrother in our bed. My name's Ryan. I'm 39, living in Kennewick, Washington, and until about 3 months ago, I thought I was living a quiet, steady life. I married my wife, Vanessa, 6 years ago after what I thought was a fairy tale kind of courtship. She was sharp, ambitious, and always had this fire in her that made you feel lucky just to be standing next to her. At least, that's how it felt in the beginning. Over time, though, little things started to shift. She got sharper, all right, but mostly with me. I'd make dinner, and she'd pick at it like I was serving her cardboard. I'd offer to spend a weekend together, and she'd claim she was too busy with networking events, whatever that meant. She stopped laughing at my jokes. Hell, she stopped listening altogether. I chalked it up to stress. Jobs, bills, life, it gets heavy. Maybe we were just in a rough patch. Everyone hits them, right? I kept telling myself that. Kept grinding away at my job. Kept coming home to a woman who seemed like she was halfway out the door already. But I never, not even in my darkest guesses, thought she'd be the one to shove me out first, and not alone, either. Worse yet, I never would have guessed who she'd invite into our lives, or our bedroom. Looking back now, the signs were so obvious it almost feels like she wanted me to catch her. Not right away. No, she was too careful for that. But like some part of her just couldn't keep up the charade forever. It started slow. Little changes. The kind you can explain away when you're tired, when you're working too much, when you just want so badly for things to be normal. Like the way she started staying late at the office. At first, it was once a week. No big deal. Then it was 2, 3 nights. And when she came home, she smelled different. Not like her usual floral body spray. No, something sharper, muskier, not hers. I'd ask her about it, keeping my voice light, joking even, but she'd just roll her eyes and say some new guy had started at work who didn't know when to ease up on the cologne. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to so badly. I remember thinking, it's fine, Ryan. She's stressed. She's busy. You're being paranoid. But paranoia has a funny way of sticking around when it's trying to tell you something important. Her phone habits changed too. That was harder to ignore. Before, she'd leave it lying around on the couch, on the counter, sometimes even forgotten in the bathroom. Now it was always glued to her hand. Worse than that, she started sleeping with it under her pillow, like some teenager hiding texts from her parents. The first time I reached over, half asleep, trying to hit the snooze on what I thought was my alarm, she jolted awake and snatched the phone so fast it nearly fell to the floor. She laughed it off, said something about being jumpy, but her whole body was tense, like she thought I was about to crack her secrets open right then and there. And it wasn't just the phone or the late nights. It was her. The way she looked at me, or more accurately, the way she didn't look at me anymore. Like I wasn't even worth the effort. Like I was a lamp or a coat rack she had to walk around to get to the door. She nitpicked everything I did. Left passive-aggressive notes around the house. Please remember to take the trash out on your night, scribbled with a little angry face next to it. Criticized the way I folded laundry, like that even mattered. Complained that I wasn't ambitious enough, that maybe we weren't aligned anymore. At first, I fought to fix it. Date nights. Flowers. Trying to start conversations even when her responses were clipped and distracted. I asked her if she wanted to go away for a weekend, just the two of us. She smiled, this thin, pained smile, and said maybe some other time when work calmed down. Spoiler alert, work never calmed down. The whole time, I kept telling myself this was just a rough season. Marriages have them. You push through. You weather it. But one night, about a week before the world really shattered, I caught her smiling at her phone in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. She didn't notice me watching from the kitchen doorway. She was sitting on the couch, texting someone, her face lit up with a softness I didn't even recognize anymore. I asked her, casually, who she was talking to. She jumped, actually startled, and then laughed too loudly, too fake, telling me it was just a friend from work. It's nothing, she said. It was something. I felt it in my bones. Like the cold setting into a crack in the foundation. Something was breaking between us, and no matter how hard I pressed my hands against the cracks, it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. And still, some dumb part of me held on. I didn't want to be that guy, the guy snooping through phones, playing detective in his own home. I wanted to believe she loved me enough to be honest. I didn't know then that the biggest betrayal wasn't coming from some stranger she met at work. It was already inside the house, sleeping in my guest room whenever he was in town, eating at my table, laughing with me like a brother. My stepbrother, Brandon. The night I found out wasn't some big planned confrontation. It wasn't me setting up secret cameras or hiring a private investigator. No, it was so much worse than that. It happened by accident. It was a Saturday, and Vanessa told me she was heading out to a conference in Spokane, Some industry networking event. I didn't question it. I stayed home, figuring I'd catch up on yard work. Maybe finally organize the garage like she'd been bugging me about for months. Around 6 p.m., I realized I left my toolbox upstairs in the bedroom. Normally, I wouldn't think twice about it, but as I walked through the house, something felt off. A sixth sense, maybe. The living room was too tidy. No dishes in the sink. Windows cracked open like someone wanted to air something out quickly. I shook it off and headed up the stairs. Halfway up, I paused, hearing something. A low thud. Then a muffled laugh. My first thought was stupid. Maybe Vanessa forgot something and came back without telling me. Maybe she brought a friend. Maybe. Anything but what it actually was. I pushed the door to our bedroom open. And there they were. I didn't catch the end of it, or some whispered conversation that could be misinterpreted. No, they were in it. Right there. On my bed. Sheets tangled, bodies pressed close, the kind of scene you can't scrub out of your brain even if you wanted to. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was who it was. Brandon, my stepbrother. Smug, lazy, and for some reason, always one of Vanessa's favorite people since they first met. I never thought anything of it before. She said he was funny, easygoing, family. Funny how family stabs you where it hurts most. For a second, nobody noticed me. I stood there frozen, watching two people I trusted more than almost anyone in this world tear my life apart without a second thought. When they finally looked up, Vanessa didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. She just kind of smirked, pulled the sheet up lazily like I was the intruder, like I was the one who had to explain myself. Brandon looked guilty for about half a second, then shrugged, like getting caught was more of an inconvenience than a tragedy. Vanessa had the nerve to say it wasn't what it looked like, that there was more to the story if I would just calm down and talk like adults. As if there was any version of this nightmare where I was the irrational one. I couldn't even get words out. My mouth opened and closed like a man trying to breathe underwater. My heart hammered so loudly it drowned out everything else, their excuses, their half-hearted apologies, the sickening casualness of it all. I turned around and walked out without another word. Because if I didn't, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I wish I could tell you I handled it with grace, that I stood tall, said something cool and composed, and left them in the ruins they deserved. But the truth is, I broke. Right there, standing at the foot of the stairs, gripping the banister like it was the only thing keeping me upright. My hands were shaking so badly I thought I might pass out. I didn't want to go back up there. God, every part of me screamed to just walk away, let the wreckage fall where it would. But something inside me, that same stubborn voice that told me to work harder, love deeper, forgive longer, it wasn't ready to let them walk away clean. So I went back. I climbed the stairs, one slow step at a time, until I was standing in the doorway again. They had thrown on clothes in a half-hearted attempt at decency. Vanessa was perched at the edge of the bed, arms crossed, like a teenager caught sneaking out past curfew. Brandon just leaned against the dresser, hands in his pockets, looking anywhere but at me. I asked her, point blank, how long it had been going on. My voice didn't even sound like mine, it came out raw, cracked at the edges. Vanessa didn't hesitate. Said it started a few months ago. Said it just happened. Like they tripped and fell into each other on accident. Like that made it any better. I asked her why. Why Brandon? Of all the people in the world. Why my own stepbrother? She rolled her eyes, actually rolled her eyes, and said I was never around. That I stopped being exciting. That being with me felt like living with a sad little man clinging to a dead marriage. She said she didn't even feel guilty about it. That she deserved to be happy and found a connection with Brandon she hadn't felt with me in years. And then came the cherry on top. She told me, flat out, that she never really loved me the way I loved her. That she settled because I was stable, safe, someone to build a life with until something better came along. I laughed. I couldn't help it. A short, ugly bark of a laugh that bounced off the walls of the bedroom that used to feel like a sanctuary and now felt like a crime scene. Brandon finally found his voice. He said he didn't mean for it to happen, that he cared about me, that this didn't change how much he loved me as a brother. As a brother. Standing there, listening to the woman I married and the man I grew up calling family justify gutting my life like it was some complicated misunderstanding, I realized something. They weren't sorry. Not really. They were sorry they got caught. They were sorry it wasn't easier. But the betrayal itself? They wore it like a second skin. I looked at them, really looked, and felt something break free inside me. Not rage. Not sadness. Something colder. Something cleaner. Acceptance. They had made their choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. The hours after I left that room are a blur. If you asked me what I did, where I went, I couldn't tell you exactly. I just remember the sensation of driving with no destination, hands white-knuckled around the steering wheel, heart pounding so hard it blurred the world outside the windshield. I ended up in a Walmart parking lot 20 miles out of town. Just sat there in my truck, staring out at nothing. People came and went, shopping carts clattered against the corrals, kids screamed, couples laughed. Life moved around me like a movie on mute while I just sat there, broken in ways I couldn't even put into words. The weirdest thing about betrayal is how quiet it feels. You expect rage, fireworks, screaming matches. But the real thing? It's heavy. It sits on your chest and squeezes until breathing feels like work. I kept replaying the scene in my head, Vanessa's smirk, Brandon's cowardly silence, like some sick highlight reel on a loop. I thought about every time I trusted them, every dinner we shared, every holiday, every late-night conversation where I told them things I barely told myself. And the whole time, they were carving a hole under my feet. I should have been furious. I should have been plotting revenge, throwing things, shouting into the void. Instead, I just felt empty, hollowed out. The first real thing I did was call my buddy Mike. I couldn't even form the words properly at first. Just sat there holding the phone to my ear, waiting for some kind of courage to show up. When he answered, I croaked out that I needed somewhere to crash for a few days. He didn't ask questions. Just gave me the address and told me the spare key was under the mat. Sometimes it's the people you least expect who show up when everything else falls apart. When I pulled into his driveway, I felt like I was wearing someone else's skin. Mike wasn't home yet, but true to his word, the key was waiting. I let myself in, dumped my duffel bag, the only thing I had the clarity to grab from the house, and collapsed onto the couch. And then, for the first time since I caught them, I cried. Not a dignified, single tear down the cheek kind of cry. No, this was the ugly, heaving, chest-racking sobs that you think only happen in bad TV dramas. The kind that leaves you gasping, feeling like you're being wrung out from the inside. I cried for the man who had trusted too much. I cried for the marriage I thought I had. I cried for the home that wasn't home anymore. And when I finally stopped, when there was nothing left but an aching hollow where my heart used to be, I stared up at the ceiling and realized something that chilled me to the bone. I wasn't mourning Vanessa. Not really. I was mourning the man I was before I opened that bedroom door. Because that guy was dead. And in his place was someone I didn't recognize yet. Someone who was going to have to learn real fast how to live again, alone. The next morning hit me like a freight train. No gentle easing into the day. No foggy moments between sleep and waking. Just instant, gut punch awareness. She cheated on me with my stepbrother. In my own house. In our bed. I laid there on Mike's worn-out couch staring at the ceiling like it might give me answers. But all I got was silence and the dull ache behind my eyes from crying myself dry the night before. I should have felt something. Rage, despair, something. But all I felt was this strange, eerie calm. Like a storm had ripped through and left nothing standing. I kept thinking about the question people always ask after something like this. What are you going to do? Hell if I knew. Part of me wanted to burn it all down. March back into the house, toss their crap onto the front lawn, and tell the whole neighborhood exactly what kind of people they were. Another part of me wanted to crawl into a hole somewhere and forget they ever existed. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep and everything to do with carrying around betrayal like a boulder strapped to my chest. I didn't call Vanessa. She didn't call me either. Not even a pathetic text message. No apology. No half-hearted explanation. Nothing. Which told me everything I needed to know. If she wasn't fighting for me now, she never would have. I was just the safety net she didn't need anymore. The boring fallback she outgrew when something shinier and riskier came along. Brandon? I knew better than to expect anything from him. The guy had been a leech his whole life, borrowing money, crashing on couches, floating through relationships like a tourist. I guess I just never thought he'd float straight through my marriage too. I spent most of that day sitting on Mike's porch, drinking terrible coffee from his chipped Seahawks mug, trying to piece together a plan. Every time I thought about going home, my stomach twisted. Not because I missed Vanessa, but because the idea of walking through that house, seeing the bed they defiled, smelling the ghosts of what used to be my life, made me physically ill. I thought about confrontation, about demanding answers, screaming until my voice broke, making them hurt the way I hurt. But what good would it do? I wasn't going to get closure from people who had already slammed the door in my face without a second thought. No, if there was going to be closure, it would have to come from me. So I made a decision right there on that porch, staring out at the gray Washington sky. I wasn't fighting for someone who didn't choose me. I wasn't begging for scraps from a woman who had already fed everything good between us to someone else. I was walking away. Maybe broken, maybe bleeding, but still standing. And they were going to feel my absence a lot longer than I would feel their betrayal. The thing about betrayal is, After the crying stops and the shock wears off, you're left with this strange, humming clarity. Like someone finally wiped the fog off the mirror, and now you can see exactly how bad things have gotten, how long you were lying to yourself just to survive it. That Monday morning, I woke up still stretched out on Mike's couch, the rising sun slanting across the dusty floorboards. My neck was stiff, my back ached, and my heart still felt like it had been run over by a semi, but something inside me had changed. The grief was still there, yeah, but it was quieter now, sitting in the corner instead of trying to strangle me. In its place was something colder, sharper. Resolve. I knew what I had to do. First, get my life back. I made a list in the Notes app on my phone, because that's the kind of person I am. Even heartbroken, I need a plan. It was a simple list, but it felt like reclaiming a little piece of myself just writing it down. Contact a divorce lawyer. Lock down finances. Remove my name from anything I could. Gather my personal stuff from the house. Change my mailing address. Block both of them. It felt mechanical, clinical even, like I was writing instructions for a stranger. But it was necessary, because what they took from me wasn't just love or trust, it was my peace, and I was damn sure going to claw it back. First thing, I called a lawyer. Found a guy with good reviews and a reputation for being a shark when necessary. His receptionist squeezed me in for a consult the next morning. Just making that call made me feel a little less helpless. Like maybe I wasn't the sad sack they left behind. Maybe I was the guy about to burn the whole rotten bridge down. Next, I logged into our joint bank accounts. My heart thudded heavy in my chest when I saw it. She'd already started siphoning money. Not a lot, yet, but enough that the warning signs were flashing. I moved every cent that was legally mine into a new account. I froze our joint credit cards. Set up fraud alerts on my name. It wasn't about revenge. It was survival. She could cheat all she wanted, but she wasn't going to rob me blind on the way out. Later that afternoon, when I was sure they wouldn't be home, I went back to the house. Walking in felt like stepping onto a crime scene. Everything looked the same: furniture, pictures on the wall, the faint smell of her vanilla candles, but it was all wrong now. Rotten under the surface. I moved quickly, grabbing only what mattered. Clothes. Important documents. Sentimental stuff they wouldn't even think twice about. My late mom's photo albums, a box of old letters from when I was a dumb, hopeful teenager. I didn't touch the bed. Couldn't even look at it. Before I left, I stood in the living room for a long minute, just taking it all in. The life we built. The life she threw away. The life I had to start over without her. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't raging. I was just done. And for the first time in days, that thought didn't terrify me. It felt like freedom. It didn't take long for them to notice the change. 2 days after I cleaned out my side of the closet and locked down the finances, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. First, it was a few texts from Vanessa, all casual, like nothing had happened. Hey, can we talk? I think we need to be adults about this. I don't want things to get messy. Messy. That word made me laugh out loud, bitter and sharp, like she hadn't already set the entire damn thing on fire. When I didn't respond, she started calling. I let it ring every time. I wasn't ready to hear her voice dripping with whatever fake sympathy she thought would fix this. I knew how it would go. Crocodile tears, half-truths, maybe even blaming me if she was feeling bold. I'd seen this playbook before in other people's stories. Now it was my turn in the starring role. Then came Brandon. A text from him, out of nowhere. Bro, don't let her turn you against me. It wasn't like that. Not like that. Like there was a version of this betrayal where I was supposed to high-five him and say, "No worries, man. Thanks for ruining my life, but at least you had fun." I didn't reply. Didn't even open the message after seeing the first few words. What was there to say? They weren't reaching out because they were sorry. They were reaching out because they realized I was gone. Really, truly gone. Not just sulking, not just being dramatic, gone. And losing their grip on me scared them more than losing my trust ever did. Later that night, Vanessa finally showed her true hand. A long text, way longer than the half-hearted ones before, popped up on my screen. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. She blamed stress, said she was lonely, said she never meant for it to happen, said I had been emotionally distant for a long time, said Brandon was there for her in ways I refused to be. And then, the kicker, she claimed she only slept with him once, and it was a mistake they immediately regretted. If I hadn't walked in on them comfortably tangled up like it was just another Tuesday, maybe I would have hesitated. Maybe that old part of me, the one desperate to believe her, would have cracked open just enough for her words to slip through. But I had seen it. I knew better now. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling strangely detached, like I was reading someone else's sad story, like none of it belonged to me anymore. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was realizing how easily she lied, how smooth it rolled off her tongue, how willing she was to rewrite history the second it suited her. I didn't text back. I didn't call. I didn't try to correct her version of events. Because when someone shows you the truth about who they are, you don't argue with them. You just believe it, and you act accordingly. And for me, that meant walking away without another backward glance. Something changes in you after a betrayal like that. It's not loud. It's not even immediate. It's a slow, heavy shift, like a massive ship turning in the water, almost too slow to notice at first until you realize you're facing a completely different direction. That's what acceptance felt like for me. Not a moment of triumph. Not a speech or a final confrontation. Just stillness. I stopped checking my phone. Stopped wondering if she'd reach out again. I didn't care. The life we had was a burned-out husk, and no amount of her pretty words or Brandon's pathetic guilt trips was going to rebuild it. I canceled the lease on my old place and started the paperwork to officially move forward with the divorce. My lawyer was a quiet, sharp man who didn't waste time on sympathy. I didn't need it anyway. Sympathy wasn't going to undo the damage. Only action would. We filed on the grounds of adultery. Washington's a no-fault state, but documenting the affair gave me some leverage, especially regarding assets. Turns out Vanessa hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She was trying to screw me financially too. Good thing I'd frozen the accounts when I did. The few friends who knew the situation, the real situation, not the watered-down version I let most people see, were stunned. They kept saying how strong I was, how they didn't know how I was holding it together. I didn't know how to explain it to them. It wasn't strength. It was necessity. When your house is on fire, you don't stand there crying about the curtains. You get out. You save yourself. You rebuild later. And I was rebuilding. Slowly. Quietly. On my own terms this time. I found a small one-bedroom place downtown. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every dish, every damn fork, mine. No shared memories attached. No ghosts hiding in the corners. Just clean, empty space and the terrifying freedom to fill it however I wanted. There were hard moments, sure. Nights when the silence felt heavier than betrayal ever did. Times when I caught myself thinking about what I lost instead of what I escaped. But every day, it got a little easier. A little lighter. I didn't hate Vanessa. Not anymore. Hate takes energy. Energy she didn't deserve. She was just a chapter. One I never had to reread again. One that taught me the kind of lessons you don't learn in the good times. And Brandon? He became what he always was deep down, someone I used to know. They didn't win. They didn't break me. They just freed me in the ugliest way possible.